So the decision was changed. It was reversed. They obviously tried to come up with a different way forward because Harry wanted to be serving alongside his fellow troops in whichever location he was sent to. And I think he's very brave to have gone there. But so true too are all the troops are out there. I agree with that comment. And I do think there are...
The attempt to keep it all hushed up was because, in his words, he was a bullet magnet, wasn't it?
Exactly. And
it attracted the bullets.
A different way had to be found because when they announced it last time, there was so much publicity attracted that it became very apparent that if he had gone to Iraq, that there would have been major security and safety problems.
The blanket clamp down on the news that he was there?
2 points there. Yes, I do. I do support in terms of safety and security. And the second point is it is surely very difficult to achieve anonymity, if that's what was being sought in Annabelle's words, when you've got a full BBC documentary team out there with you. So I think there must have been very complex and difficult issues to resolve there.
Somebody might have noticed.
I think it is, indeed, you could make that point. And I think it will be very difficult for him to stay there. I agree that it's a military decision based on security. The final point I'd like to make is I hope, while he's been out there, that he has had the equipment and the support that every troop in Afghanistan needs, because too many of our troops have been out there and have not come home because they have not been properly equipped. And that's a very serious issue that I hope we get the opportunity to highlight as a result of all of this.
We'll go on to another question. Suha Al-Dabakh, please.
Hi. Being of Iraqi origin, I would like to know why the government is so reluctant to release the minutes of cabinet meetings where the invasion of Iraq and its legality was discussed.
Why is the government so reluctant to release the minutes of cabinet meetings, which is what the Information Commissioner, Richard Thomas, after a request under the Freedom of Information Act, suggested should be done, and it was rejected by the Cabinet Office, the meetings where the invasion of Iraq and its legality was discussed? George Galloway.
Well, I caution against any great expectation about what will be in these minutes, because otherwise you would be assuming that we had a cabinet worthy of the name, and that would in turn assume we had a parliament worthy of the name. In fact, we have neither, and so the minutes are likely to be cursory in the extreme, because the debate was cursory in the extreme. Mr. Blair gave them their marching orders, and they, all of them, until it was too late, including the late Robin Cook, marched according to those orders. And the Parliament, you see, one of the great myths of the last period is that Tony Blair took us to war in Iraq. In fact, the British Parliament took us to war in Iraq. In their hundreds, from all these parties, with the exception of the Liberal Democrats and the SNP, all these MPs, Tory and Labour, marched through the lobbies and took us into this disaster. You won't find the reasoning in the cabinet minutes. It is remarkable, though, that this Information Commissioner is proving extremely uncomfortable for the political class, and more power to his elbow.
Cathy Jemison, why do you think the government is refusing the request?
Well, I think there is a principle that in cabinet government, once decisions are taken, there is collective responsibility, and there has been a long-held tradition that cabinet minutes, are not released to the general public at that particular time. People have to be able to have debate and discussion, but as I said, once a decision is arrived at, it's exactly the same. It will be the same in the cabinet that Nicola now serves in as when Nicol and I served in cabinet. Those decisions are taken, and we go out, or we did go out there and put forward the collective view.
Okay, so Nicola, do you agree with her that these minutes shouldn't be released by the government?
I think in general terms, the rule that says that cabinet minutes shouldn't be released until some years after is a good one, because it's about good government. It's about making sure ministers round the table can express views freely and frankly, and then decisions are taken and there's collective responsibility. But like any good rule, there are always exceptions, and I think the key thing is those exceptions should be rare. They should be reserved for matters of the utmost seriousness, and decisions should be taken by an independent body. And I think this case ticks all of these boxes. I mean, what could be more important than issues of war and peace? And the question from Sua was, why is the government so reluctant to have them released? Well, this is a government that took this country into an illegal war on the basis of a lie. And they don't want any further proof of that. Now, you know, this week already, or last week, again, thanks to the Freedom of Information Commissioner, and I agree with Georgie's points there, we got the original draft of the dodgy dossier. We now know it was drafted by a spin doctor. It was sexed up. A weapons expert died. A BBC journalist and the Director General of the BBC had to resign. And now we know they were all telling the truth and the government was lying. So I think it is important to know what the Cabinet knew about the legal advice, because we know Lord Goldsmith's original opinion, as opposed to the sanitised version, as the late Robin Cook said, in no place sanctioned the legality of the war. So I think it is in the public interest to know if the Cabinet knew that, if they discussed that, and if they just dismissed it and went ahead with an illegal war anyway.
So if the Freedom of Information Act says, as it does, that proceedings of the Cabinet are excluded from these requests, do you think they should set that aside?
Well, the Freedom of Information Commissioner said that he wasn't setting a general precedent here. He was taking a view in a case that was exceptional, and I think that's right. I think the general rule is fine, but in exceptional cases there is room to move away from it.
Yeah, I must say, I think the general rule, regardless of the party political colour of the government at the time, that Cabinet minutes are not disclosed, is actually an important one, because it seems to me that ministers, and it's easy to be party political in this respect, but we have to accept, contrary to what George may think, that cabinets of different political persuasion wrestle with perplexing and challenging decisions. Now, I do think that discussion of these issues and expression of opinion will be inhibited if people think that they can't speak freely in the confidence of a cabinet environment. One aspect of this particular bit of cabinet activity, of course, is relevant to mention. We've had not just one, but we've had two, we've had three, I think, inquiries now over the years.
Not real inquiries, Annabelle. That's what we need, a public inquiry into the whole war and the run-up to it and the conduct of it.
Well, let me perhaps unusually not totally disagree with that, George, because what the Conservatives would like to see, of course, is an inquiry by Privy Councillors into before and after, and I think that's a very appropriate way to look at this. But the point is that this particular issue, this Iraqi war, which has aroused such passions throughout the United Kingdom, has been the subject already of a lot of investigation, inquiry, speculation, and it does make you wonder if there is something of an anomaly then that the Cabinet discussions in relation to this whole issue are not available. But I would hold firm to the general rule that I think the confidentiality of Cabinet discussions is extremely important.
Okay.
And for the safety of us all, that's a rule that I think in the whole has to be observed.
Nicholas Stephen, and then I'll come to the one or two who want to speak. Nicholas Stephen first.
Cathy mentioned a point of principle. I don't think this is an issue of principle. I think it's an issue of culture. And I think Britain remains one of the most secretive nations in terms of the culture and the attitude towards freedom of information. It's only in the last few years that we've started to see an opening up of that. But I think it will go much, much further. And there are many countries that release their cabinet minutes. They will not go into military secrets or issues that could undermine the state, but they can be open about the sort of discussions that were taking place. And we've got to change that culture in the United Kingdom. But the other issue is the issue of huge embarrassment to this government. And that's the reason I think they're suppressing things, because I think to open up the advice that they received would be to reveal that this was an illegal war, to reveal that the decision-making process was deeply flawed, to reveal just how wrong it was that we were led into this war. And that's the reason why the cover-up will continue. That's why the culture's got to change.
If members of Parliament are placed there to act on my behalf, then why should their actions, which are in effect my actions, be held such a mystery?
Why should they be held
in such mystery?
Mystery. So you would like openness on all decision-making?
Because they're my actions, effectively, so why should I not know
Cathy
what they are?
Jemison, what do you say to that? Because you were defending the secrecy of Cabinet.